Well, hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's a very special day because this is the video that I know a lot of you have been waiting for, especially our friends in Australia who have a particular problem with the dashboards. So this is part 3 of dashboard removal and refurbishment. And what we're going to be looking at primarily is the number one problem these dashboards have. The heater vents breaking up and the reason they break up. Now, there is mostly only one reason. That is the fact that these cars, when sitting in the sun, reach astronomical temperatures if left without proper protection. And what happens then is the dashboard warps. It peels away from its plastic backing, and then it means that nothing fits properly. You'll also find that if you look down from the side or from the top, that it no longer meets up with this ledge where it's supposed to meet. And the problem with that is when you get your new vents and you try to fit them, they won't sit square and you have huge gaps all the way round. This all looks terrible, and in fact it's probably not even worth putting in the new vents because they'll just look so bad, or you can't fit them at all because you can't bend it enough to reach the screw holes. So this part of the video has cost me a lot of money and taken a lot of time in research, finding out how we can repair these because they cannot be replaced anymore. And even if you could still get them, the price was astronomical. You can buy cars for what these new dashboards would cost you. Thanks to the research I've done, we now know all of the techniques required to put these dashboards back to the original condition and shape so your new vents will fit perfectly and no one will ever know it's been repaired. Now, during this video we're going to be swapping from one dashboard to another, and you'll see that some are left-hand drive and some are right-hand drive. The techniques are exactly the same and there's no smoke and mirrors or tricks involved. The only reason I'm swapping from one to another is to show different techniques for different problems with the dashboard. First of all, I'm going to cut the video. I'm going to put one of these dashboards down and I'm going to get all the tools that you may need in order to complete the job. So I'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, so let's take a look at the tools you're going to need. First of all, a Phillips screwdriver, just a regular Phillips screwdriver. You're going to need a selection of gripping tools. Now, these mole grips, vice grips, whatever you call them in your country, are perfect for the job. Large and small, the more you have, the easier the job's going to be. You're going to need a marker pen. Permanent is better. You're going to need a craft knife with a really sharp blade. You're going to need some super glue. Now, depending on how much work you need to do, you know, this stuff is so cheap, just get half a dozen tubes and you'll be covered. You're going to need some clips. I believe we call these bulldog clips, but you need to get really strong spring ones. Something around about 3 centimeters in length is fine, about 1.25 inches. A little bit smaller would also be fine, but don't go any bigger. You're going to need a pile of elastic bands, something with some really good strength to it. Again, looking at the size, what's a couple of inches unstretched. 2 inch would be fine, about 6 centimeters. You're going to need a piece of cardboard. You're going to need a hot air gun and some baby oil, mineral oil. I won't say the brand of this one, the brand is irrelevant, they're all pretty much the same thing. So just some of that stuff you use on your babies when they're young. And finally, a leather glove, something to protect your hands from the heat. You're going to be handling this when it is hot, so you don't want to burn yourself, and this is perfect for the job. You may at some point throughout this decide that you want to use different tools. Once you see what we're doing, it'll be down to you to decide what you want to use best for you. Now remember, I try to do all of these videos for the average man on the street. This is not a commercial video and it is not designed for you know, a full-scale business garage workshop. However, there's a lot of normal domestic people now who tend to buy all sorts of tools and bits and pieces. So you may decide that rather than try to use cheap tools to try and do it in a DIY sense, you might decide you want to make something just for the purpose of what we're doing to get the absolute best results. That's entirely up to you. This is purely for the man on the street. So now I'm going to move all the tools away so I can get this particular dashboard onto the bench properly and show you how to start the job. I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, so before we actually get down to the job, we're going to have to prepare our job. This way we can get the best possible results without doing any damage. So to do that, you probably remember when you took your dashboard out, you're left with all of this ducting on the back. Now this creates a couple of problems for us. First of all, it reduces the access to the areas that we're going to need to get to. And secondly, there is a conflict with the plastics because the dashboard is made up, including the ducting, of at least 3 different types of plastics. And each of the plastics reacts at a different temperature. So we can't risk putting heat around something that might get damaged by heating something else. So we're going to remove all the ducting first of all. And to do this, we're going to make it easier for reassembly by numbering each of the parts. Now normally you would number things as you take them off, but because this is layer upon layer, you might not remember how it originally went together. So what we're going to do is number it in reverse order so that when you put it back together, you'll put it back in the right order. So we're going to start with this section here, and you're going to number that number 1. Then we're going to come over to here and number 2. And you'll number the 2 sides of the 2 pieces so you know which one goes to which. Then on this side you have the number 3, number both pieces. Then we go to number 4 in here. Then we have number 5 over here. And number 6 on this side. And now we can start taking this apart and know exactly where everything goes back together. Now I'm not going to give a full and intimate description on how to unscrew these pieces because it's quite obvious when you follow it along where all the screws are. So my cameraman Mitch here may film some of this. He might speed up the film or he might decide to cut it. So if we start off by locating our first couple of screws, there's one just here and one just in there, if you can get the camera in there. A lot of people miss that one and they try to force it apart. Just put your screws to one side for a minute. Then we've got another one down here. And the same on the other side. Okay, now at this point we should be able to remove this section of plastic, or 3 sections I should say. They'll all come out as one piece. It's up to you if you leave them as one piece or pull them apart. It's probably just as easy to leave it as one piece and put that out your way. Now what I tend to do at this point is put all of the screws back in the holes where you took them out of. This way you're going to remember exactly which screw went where, and there won't be any problems in the future of kicking over pots and things and knowing what's what. And of course we had one out of here. So that's that first section out the way. Now we'll do one side at a time. One screw here. Well, that's on there tight. There we go. That's that one. And we'll put the screw back in. And and the same on the other side, but on this side we have a couple of extra screws. Now remember, this dash is off a left-hand drive car. On the right-hand drive it will be the exact opposite. That's the second piece, and then we've just got a couple of screws for this one. And we'll pop all of those back in their holes. Okay, I know there was another one in here. No, not there. Let's have a look at the plastic. Ah, there we go. Ah, you see, it's a good reason for putting all these screws back in case any of you hadn't worked it out. None of these videos are rehearsed. We don't have a producer or anything like that. It's literally as it is. So there's going to be mistakes. I apologize for that, but it just goes to show this is a DIY job for the average man on the street. Now I had a message from, oh dear, I forgot to write it down. We had a message from someone anyway asking how you get the clocks out. So here's, you know, the answer really. We could, while we're here, take these out, although it's not actually necessary for this job. Although that depends, I guess, on where the damage is to your dashboard. I'm going to have to just lower these wires out the way for a second, but we'll put them straight back because you don't actually need to remove the wiring for the job.
Now,
I think we'll just take the clocks from here this occasion and leave all the metal working.
damn, that's very, very tight.
Okay, so I'm sorry I can't remember who asked the question about how to remove these. However, I would say if your clocks are faulty, please don't throw them away. These are fully repairable. There's going to be someone in your country that can do them for you. I certainly do them in this country. And there's going to be people all around the world. They're not particularly technical in any way. This is old technology and easily repaired. So I'll just put back all the screws so we don't forget where they go.
We'll put those in first. No.
Ah, there we go. Thank goodness for cameramen. You wouldn't believe how many of these I've done, and I still get the odd one wrong. Okay, and one final thing while we're on this side, you need to remove your old and broken vents. Very, very simple. Just undo the 3 screws on each one. Now there is one thing I can tell you at this point. You will notice that the hole that the screw is going through is much bigger than it needs to be. And this is going to be apparent as we work through the repairs on these things. These dashboards are not made to an exact, precise measurement. And when they're assembled at the factory, there'll be professional fitters that know how to line all of these things up so they look absolutely perfect to the man on the street. When you go to line all this up, you're going to think to yourself, oh my God, that's ridiculous. That doesn't just drop into place and go perfectly first time. You're going to have to use a bit of judgment and jiggling, just as they did at the factory, to get everything perfectly lined up. And you're going to find that sometimes the screws will be in a different place. You may even have to go to a bigger screw, because you notice this screw is only a fraction bigger than the hole itself, and I've actually known the screws to go straight through the holes when you do them up, so you may have to put in a washer or something to take up that little bit of extra play. That's the first one. That's a big creepy spider there. Don't know which country that's come from, because this car wasn't from the UK. Okay. So that's our broken vents out the way. You can see how these have warped over the time that they've been in service. They're no longer nice and straight or curved to the shape of the dashboard. And you can see the huge gap that's formed behind there, where the vinyl has come away from the dash itself behind. So we're going to correct all of those faults so everything goes back together nicely. At this point, I'm just going to cut the video for a short while I go and get a drink and prepare for the next section. So now we're moving on to the next section. We're still in the prepping stage at this point, and what we're going to do is thoroughly clean the dashboard. Now you might think, well, what does it matter? I'll clean it before I put it back. But believe me, I've spent a lot of time researching the best techniques for repairing these dashboards, and cleaning it is really important for two reasons. First of all, over the years you have built up layer upon layer upon layer of cleaners and waxes and rubber protectors, as well as 30 years of dust. Now that dust is going to be ingrained into the plastic surface, and we're going to be heating this up, and when you do that, all that dust that could be washed out will be absorbed by the plastic, and you're going to lose the proper finish. Also, we don't know what the chemicals are that you've put onto that dashboard, and when you heat it, the chemicals are going to start to vaporize, and you're going to be inhaling them if you don't have the proper protection. And without knowing what those cables are, it could do all sorts of things to your lungs. So to protect yourself and to protect your dashboard and to get the best possible finish, you're going to clean it, and all you're going to use is a simple non-perfumed, non-chemicaled soap and regular water. I tend to use a nice nylon bristled brush, and it allows you to get right into all the little nooks and crannies to give your dashboard a good clean. Now, as usual, we're going to speed up the video a little bit, or cut the video, because you don't need to watch me clean the whole dashboard. You can work that out for yourself. I just want to show you something quickly. If I just get a cloth to dry that, if you could hold just for 1 second. Now you're already going to see where we've cleaned it. Now I've dried it, it's almost a totally different colour. It's brought that nice sheen back to the plastic. So already you're starting to refurbish this without even knowing it. So I'll carry on with the cleaning now. Now during your cleaning, although it's not a major disaster if you do, try to avoid getting too much water behind the vent gaps here. It's just going to take longer to dry out before we start to correct all the problems. And now the dashboard is cleaned and dried, we're ready to move on to the next and probably the final piece before we start on the good bit of making it look new again. So just finally, we've got this foam along here. Now this is a regular foam on a double-sided sticky tape backing, and if you don't manage to get this off in one piece, it doesn't matter. This stuff is now readily available on the market and it's very, very cheap. So the chances are you're just going to replace that with some new foam when you reconstruct it. Now we're ready to start on the best bit of the video, and that is how to start putting this back to new again. Now before we do that, I'm just going to explain to you why this has been such a complicated process and why it's taken me so long and so much money to get to this stage. If you come in a bit closer, you'll see the dashboard is not made up of a single piece of material. The internal part is a very hard plastic called polycarbonate, and the polycarbonate is known as a thermoset plastic. Once it's molded, you cannot change its shape, melt it back down, or turn it into anything else. It's literally as it is. But the beauty of that is it will retain its shape almost indefinitely. So unless you've happened to have broken it, physically broken it, you don't need to worry about that part of the dashboard at all. The second part of the dashboard is a polyurethane foam, a spongy type material. Now that's a wonderful product when it's new. It gives a lot of elasticity to the dashboard and gives it a very vinyl type feeling. But the problem with that is over time the polyurethane starts to break down and become powdery. Also, when you heat it or freeze it, it tends to change its shape very, very slightly. And over a 30-year period, in many places now, the foam has become 3, 4, 5 times thicker than it was. So we're going to have to adapt that so we can get it back to its original shape. And finally, the top covering. For many, many years, I thought this was a vinyl covering. And I spent a lot of time trying to find companies to make that vinyl covering again. And then you could have a professional company recover it. But as it turns out, it's not a vinyl. It turns out it's ABS plastic. And ABS plastic is fantastic for us because ABS plastic has got a very, very long lifespan. And it's what they call a thermoplastic amorphous polymer, which means it never truly sets. You can heat it up, turn it back into a liquid, or at just the right temperature, it becomes elastic. And we can pull it back to where it needs to be to make it a new dashboard again without doing any damage at all. So these are the processes we're going to use. We've got to warm it, we've got to reshape it, and we've got to rebond it back as it should be. Now once again, this sounds very, very simple. I'm going to show you a few processes that I've tried. Not that they're necessarily the best processes, but I've had to bear in mind that this video is for the man at home. This is something you will be able to do in your own garage, garden, kitchen, if the wife will let you, or wherever you want. Oh, in fact, I'm being rather sexist. If you're a woman, whether your partner will let you. So we're going to take our time and go through this. The first thing I need to point out is plastics that have a recyclable type formation. So in other words, the thermoplastic amorphous polymers, they have a specific temperature, and every type of plastic that is that type of plastic will have its own specific temperature. Now ABS at around about 220 degrees becomes a liquid again. You do not want to turn this back into a liquid because a dashboard running all over your floor is no use whatsoever. At 160 degrees is the upper limit pretty much of where we dare to take this to, where we can still maneuver it to where we want it to be and rebond it. How do you know at home when it's 160 degrees? Well, you don't, unless you've got a digital thermometer that's measuring very accurately, very rapidly. You're stuck. In an ideal world, we'd put this thing in a nice big oven with some sort of attachments to it that stretch it to the right place, and then we'll cool it. But you don't, or not likely to have that. I certainly don't have that. So we need some way of knowing the exact temperature that the plastic is for reshaping. Now, fortunately, I did a bit of research, and as it turns out, good old baby oil will smoke off and burn at around about 150 degrees. That's just perfect for what we need, because you know when this is starting to smoke, you have reached the temperature, the maximum temperature you dare to go to for what you want to do. So what we're going to do now is cover the whole dashboard in a thin layer of baby oil. And this is going to be our permanent indicator of what we're doing and whether it's safe to do. So just grab some kitchen towel. Lots of baby oil. Now when you're putting this on, try not to get it into the foam at all, because we're going to need to rebond this, and obviously the oil will stop it rebonding. So at this point you're only going to need to worry about anything on the outside. Cover the whole dashboard. It's not going to harm the plastic in any way at all. This is actually going to help you to do the repair, and it will help to keep the plastic a bit more supple while you're doing the work. Now once again, you don't need to watch this whole section through. Mitch may decide to cut it or speed it up or whatever. Just cover the whole dashboard. You are going to be warming the whole dashboard. Do not think that you only need to coat it on the actual area you're doing the repair. And if you give me a few minutes, I'll explain why it's important to do the whole dashboard at one point. Okay, so there we go. That's good enough, and just in time because I just ran out. So now we come to the next part of the problem. If you feel this plastic now, especially if you come in here, you'll see that it's come away from the original polycarbonate backing. And if you try to push it in, you'll notice that this has gone really hard, especially those of you in Australia and other hot climates. Even if you could push it in, which you can under great strength, as soon as you let it go, that's going to come back out again. So even if we glue it, even with the strongest possible glue, that is not going to stay in there. But like I said, the beauty of ABS plastic is that when you warm it, it will once again be soft. And once it's soft, we can get it into position and hold it there until it goes cold. Once it goes cold, it will then stay in its cold position. So what we're going to do now is do the first part of the techniques for repairing this dashboard, because they all have different faults. Now this one fortunately has retained its position. Now if I can just grab something to point with a second. Now this edge here, if you come in close, this edge here is the edge that they would have used as a guide to originally cut this edge. So they would have bonded all this onto the backing and then used a knife to trim around there. Now this is probably the easiest part of any repair you're going to do. As long as this part has not shrunk back then it's easy enough to just rebond that to exactly where it is. So this is going to be the first demonstration I do. If you look over here, if I put that onto the backing, you'll see that this piece of the dashboard has shrunk back by, what's that, maybe about 6 millimeters. And here it's even further back, probably about 8 millimeters. So we don't want to just bond that straight back down. If we do that, we're going to be left with a huge gap when you go to put in your new vent. So we'll just start with this one for now. One other thing, if I turn this up, you'll see that on this side it's still bonded and there's no gap. The gap is only on this side. However, we're not going to just warm up one area, because if I can just grab a balloon for you, I'll show you something. If we just warm up one area of something that has a pattern, then when we go to stretch it in any way at all, it's going to distort the pattern in just that area. So what we're going to do is warm the whole area, so all of it stretches simultaneously, and you keep your original pattern that's in the plastic without any distortion. So now I'm going to cut the video again while I get the tools ready for the next piece of the video. Now we're back and ready for the first stage of our repairs. Now this is the most basic repair you're going to do, and this is solely where the two pieces have separated. There's no adjustment needed to size or anything like that. You're purely going to rebond it to the car. Also note your foam backing. Make sure the foam backing has not changed shape in any way and that it's not swollen. If it's uniform all the way around, all matched up, just peeled away. Now all we're going to do, before I start, I'll tell you, you're going to need a glove, you're going to need some super glue, and you're going to need a cotton bud or something similar to apply the super glue quickly, because it's very quick drying. Now at this point all we're going to do is a demonstration. With your hot air gun, which would normally have two settings, you're just going to go to the first setting. So it's going to be hot but not super hot, and you're going to start to warm the whole area around, but you're not going to get it hot. The second you see anything smoking off, you've got it too hot. Get your heater away as quick as possible. And just a reminder, as you see, that won't go back into position without an extreme amount of heat. So we're just going to warm it gently, and all the time you're going to keep that moving. Do not allow it to stop at any point, because as soon as you stop, that heat will instantly warm the plastic too much. So warm all the area around, bit by bit, working into the middle. Now today's a very cold day for us here, so this might take a little bit of time, and don't be tempted to rush it. I promise you, if you rush it, the job is going to go wrong. Just a gentle warming. It might take you a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Just keep on gently warming it, and you'll see that after a short amount of time, this plastic has now become soft. It's warm to the touch but not hot yet, so I've obviously not got it hot enough, but you can see it's now very, very pliable. So we'll keep heating it nice and gently, bit by bit. Remember, you've not only got to heat the surface of the plastic, you've got to heat all the way through, so all layers become the same temperature, and that takes time if you don't want to burn anything. Now another quick check. Yeah, it's becoming very, very soft now, but certainly not runny, and it's certainly not too hot to touch. Now by getting the heat to go all the way through, it means we'll have some time to work with it before it sets back into its original place. It's still cool enough to touch. It's certainly getting warm, but not too hot. We're going to get it to a temperature where it's just bordering on too hot to touch. And on a cold day like today, it's taking some time. Of course, you people in Australia or Florida, California, you're probably going to start off at 90 degrees. So you're not going to be far from the temperature you need to start off with. Okay, we're getting there. It's very, very easy to push back into position now, and it's almost staying in that position, which is exactly how we need it. So we'll just give it one final warm up, and then that will give us time to get the glue in there before we set it into place. Now for the next part of the job, I'm going to try to do this on my own because it's only a small area. But as we move on to the larger areas, you may well want to get some help, so someone can do the heating while someone else prepares it ready for gluing and supporting. Okay, I think that'll about do it. So now we've got a few seconds to get some glue going. Now you're going to need to be quick on this. Oops, I hope I didn't get it on the dashboard then. Now you don't want lots and lots of glue, you just need a really good coverage. And now you get your glove on and you're going to push it into position and you're going to hold it. Now if you think you don't have the strength to hold it, and this could be for a minute or so while it cools down, then you need to use some of the grips that I suggested with a piece of cardboard between the grip to hold it into place. But I'm going to try and hold this myself. Remember, if this doesn't go right the first time, there's nothing to stop you doing it over and over again, as long as you don't heat the plastic up too much and it becomes liquid. Now super glue is a wonderful glue because it works by moisture, water moisture, and as long as there's water around, it will go hard. Now of course we breathe air and air itself has moisture in, so super glue will go hard regardless. Now while your hand is still warm on there, it means it's too warm to let go. You've got to wait until it goes cold. And there you have it, that's your first repair complete. Everything is back exactly as it was when it left the factory. And that's the simplest repair you're going to be doing. From now on, things get a little bit more complicated. I'm going to take a short break for a minute, and if there's enough daylight, we'll continue with the next stage. If not, I'll continue with this video. The next day, us in England get no rain, and it's warm enough to do the job. So I'll continue shortly. Okay, so it's getting a little dark here in England now, so I'm going to be rounding things off shortly, but just before I do, I'm going to show you another technique that you're going to need to repair your dashboard. Now please remember that I'm not showing you how to repair your specific dashboard. I'm just going to give you a number of techniques that I've learned through experimenting that you can then transfer to your particular problems with your dashboard. So with this one, this is a little bit more complicated because as you can see as you look down here, the foam that should have been 2-3 millimeters thick in places has swollen quite significantly, and it's caused a warp in the dashboard that's more clearly shown if I put the vent up against it. Now this means that the new vent won't sit down properly where it should be, and therefore the whole thing looks ridiculous as it warps out of shape. Now Polyurethane foam unfortunately cannot be recompressed. At very best we might be able to saturate it with a glue, then compress it and wait for the glue to harden. But that means the whole dashboard will become hard and lose its supple feeling. Now I've actually changed dashboards for those of you that are pretty observant of what's going on. The only reason I've changed dashboards is because the other dashboard didn't have this problem, and therefore I wouldn't be able to show you this technique. Now in order to complete this, what we're going to have to do is reduce the thickness of the foam. Now we're not going to go down to the full 2 millimeters that it was originally. We're going to go slightly over that to allow for the amount of compression once it's been warmed and glued. A certain amount of the glue will be absorbed. And what we're going to do is work out roughly the thickness of the foam that we're going to need. And then we're going to cut a part of the foam away. Now this is a slow and methodical process. You're going to do it bit by bit, layer by layer, until you get the thickness that you require. Don't be tempted to rush the job. There is nothing about these repairs, that can be rushed. And if you do try to rush them, I can assure you that it will go wrong. Now you must not cut the foam from the top. You've got to cut the foam away from the bottom. The reason is super glue will not stick to the ABS properly, and you'll find it'll come loose again, but it will stick to the polycarbonate. So we're just going to go layer by layer, deeper and deeper, until we get to where we want to be. Now the reason we're using a knife rather than a saw is a saw will leave a rough edge, and the glue will have trouble sticking to the rough edge. Now, I may well cut some of this video because there's no point you just watching me cutting and cutting and cutting. You've got the rough idea. We're just going to cut the foam away from the polycarbonate chassis. Okay, so now I've cut away some foam, and you can see I've left a couple of mil of foam still along the edge there. Cut in fairly deep so you've got plenty of manoeuvring room, and just by feeling around you can see roughly where you need to be to get it all leveled off. Now what we're going to do is have some clips ready, a piece of cardboard, your glue and something to apply the glue. So first of all we're going to warm up the plastic again, just like we did with the others, just to make it more supple, because at the moment it doesn't want to go to where we want it to go. So as before, just a gentle warming back and forth, covering all the area on this side. Do not attempt to rush the job, and watch out for any smoke. If it starts smoking off, it means you've got it too hot and you need to stop the smoke very quick, which is getting harder and harder to spot because it's getting very cold here now and my breath is giving off a lot of steam. Okay, so that's softening up quite nice. We'll just go a little bit further. Now I'm going to try again to do this one on my own. However, if you have someone to hand who can help you quickly with this, it would be a big help. Okay, Now you want your glue, and as quick as you can without spilling the glue anywhere, and I hope I've got enough. You need to spread that in there the best you can. Remember, making the glue thicker will not make the job any better. It's just a thin coating. Now I've run out of glue, so I hope this works. Now you need a piece of cardboard, and you're going to use your clips to hold the cardboard in place while the glue sets. And I just hope I don't get stuck to everything in the meantime. There we go. Oh, nearly got stuck. Oh, that clip's too small. I might have to do this in 2 stages because I didn't prep for it properly. As I said, you shouldn't rush these jobs, and I've gone and rushed it. There's any more clips down there. Okay, so now we're going to leave that for about 10 minutes. Hopefully the glue was set enough. To give us a good bond. So you join me now just as I'm removing the clips. As I said, none of this is rehearsed. I don't expect to get everything right first time. And as you can see, I run out of glue, so it didn't bond here. I need to go and get some more glue. And we'll come back to do this again, but already you can see we've taken up, if you compare to here, you can see we've taken up a large amount of that gap. And then when we go to fit this, you'll find it sits in much better. Now we've still got to bring this side down, which will be one of the other techniques that I'll show you, but first of all I want to work on this side to get all this side straight first. But already that's looking a lot better. So I'll come back to this once I've got some more glue. So welcome back. I'm sorry I had to leave you before. That was bad preparation on my part. I ran out of glue. But we're back now with some fresh glue and ready to move on. Now when I left you, we was just bonding this straight line, having cut some of the foam out to make it lower and more level with the new vent. I didn't manage to finish that job, so I'm going to do that now, and then we'll move on to the final piece of this demonstration. Now before I start, because we left it for a little while, a lot of the oil was dried out of the plastic, so I'm just going to re-oil it. And this is very important for you because this is the only measure you're going to have to know that you've got the right temperature, or certainly not got it too hot. If you get it too hot, you're going to damage the plastic, and we don't want to do that. So this is a surefire way of making sure that everything's done just right. So that's re-oiled. Now because the plastic has now gone hard again because it's been allowed to go cold, we're going to warm it one final time to make it supple again, to get it into position. And as before, it's a nice gentle warming. Don't try to rush this at any point, because I promise you, you will do damage. You can get fantastic results with the techniques I'm showing you as long as you don't try to rush the job. All we need to do is just get the plastic supple enough that when you push it into position to glue it, it's going to hold that new position rather than try to go back to its previously cold position. Okay, I think that'll do it. So we'll grab some glue, pierce a hole in it. And a cotton bud. You don't have to use it, whoops. You don't have to use a cotton bud, you can use a stick or whatever you want. It's just a means of getting the glue spread evenly where you need to get it. And of course you don't need masses of this stuff, even a thinnest coat will give you enough. And then we'll get our bulldog clips. And just clip that into position. Now I should mention at this point, when it's warm and you put the bulldog clips on, it's going to cause indentations in the plastic, but you don't need to worry about that, because once the plastic's properly bonded, we can then re-warm it, put on a leather glove and just work the creases out of the plastic, and it'll all return to normal. So we'll just give that a few seconds to dry, and while it's drying I'll just explain to you, we're using up huge amounts of video on this, and you don't need to see me do the same technique over and over again. I've shown you this particular technique. So I need to do the same thing on this side to bring the whole lot level. So what I'm going to do, once we've taken these clips off, is I'll then cut the video and then I'll continue on this side on my own and come back at the end of this side so you see it all in a straight line. So hopefully that's dry now. Super glue does go off pretty damn quick. Okay, I still missed a bit there. Oh no, I didn't. It's okay, it's just no foam along that very edge piece. But the main structure is now straight. We'll correct any of these lumps and bumps after. So if I cut the video now, I'll come back to this side, then we'll correct the whole thing on video, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Okay, so after our short break, I've taken the time now to bond down this side as well, remove the extra foam. And what we're presented now with is some slight imperfections along the surface where the bulldog clips have been. And also it's an opportunity to put in the vent and see where we are on the overall project. There is no one trick fix all for this. And it's going to be a slow process in your case of doing little bits at a time to get perfection. Now I've tended to rush this a little bit because I need to get this video done in a timely manner, and you don't want to sit there for 3, 6, 10 hours while I go through every little tiny imperfection. So I'm purely showing you a set of techniques that will enable you to get a perfect dashboard again. So at this point I'm going to offer up the vent into position. I'm going to line up all the screw holes, and this will allow me then to see roughly where we are on the overall job. So by pulling that in, I can see that most of it is now corrected along this top edge. What we have is still a little bit of gap here, but generally that's not too bad, certainly a lot better than it was. So what I'm going to do now is re-warm this section, and we're going to rub out the imperfections from the bulldog clips, and we're going to also take the opportunity just to force this lip over. We only need about 1 millimeter, if that, just to correct that as best as possible. So we'll take that back out because we don't want to melt that, and then we're just going to take the heating process forward a little bit. And it is just that usual slow warming process, perhaps slightly more on this occasion because we're going to try and stretch the plastic very slightly. Now bear in mind we're still in England and it's still cold. If you're in a hot climate, you may not need to heat it anywhere near for the time that we have to heat it here. And just a reminder, the surface has all been re-oiled just to give us that indicator of if we're getting too hot. At no time must you stop the movement of the heat gun. So that's nice and soft now. Already the imperfections are starting to work themselves out, but we're still going to have to do a little bit of work. Okay, I'm going to see if that's enough. We'll put on a glove because this is going to be pretty warm. And all we're going to do is literally rub it in the direction that we want it to go. And this will do two things. A, it will take out the imperfections from the bulldog clips, and also it will allow it to stretch very slightly into position. Okay, that's already starting to cool a bit too much, so I'm hoping it will be enough rather than have to redo it. Okay, to my eye that looks pretty darn good. There is one or two bits that I'm not quite happy with, but we'll see how that looks when we put the whole thing back together. I think we'll get away with that. Now we'll move on to the next technique, and this is probably the technique that most of you are going to need a hand with. Over time you'll find that the edge of the vinyl on this side has pulled away from where it needs to be, and you're left with a big gap along the bottom. This one shows up quite acutely. We've got a huge distance between the top cover and the behind, and that means when you put in your vents, you see that huge gap. So now we've got to somehow stretch the plastic back into position. Now I thought long and hard about this. The problem is, not everyone is skilled. Not everyone has the right tooling. Excuse the fire engine going past. Let's try again. Not everyone is equipped with all the professional tools that you could possibly use for this job. Now, if you are fortunate enough to have a great workshop and you can build special facilities to doing these things, special tooling, that's great for you. And if you've got anyone nearby that also needs help, maybe you could help them with it. But I had to think of a way of making this a job that you can do at home without great expenditure or special tools being made. What we're looking for is something that will grip onto the edge of the plastic and pull it in a stretching motion back into place. So here's what I come up with. Some elastic bands and some bulldog clips. Sounds really, really basic, really, really simple, and it does the job. I've actually tried this myself. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to grab yourself some bulldog clips, approximately 1.25 inch long. Make sure they've got really good tension to them, nothing too weak. And you don't want anything too big because you may be going around corners and stuff and it will change the appearance. And then you're going to get some elastic bands. You want something with some fairly good elasticity to it. Nothing too baggy, but nothing so strong that it's a problem. Then with each of your bulldog clips, you're going to pass the elastic band through one of the holes on the handle, then bring it back through itself and tie it like that. And just repeat that for all of your clips. Okay, so you just put those to one side for a minute. The next thing you need to do is make sure that the foam is peeled away from the backing along the edge here, which it probably would have already done on its own. If it hasn't, just grab your craft knife, try not to cut the foam, just cut behind and peel it back a little bit. You want about an inch or so back from the surface to allow it to stretch a fair distance without distorting the plastic. Just work your way along bit by bit, and this can be glued back down after. Okay, now we've got some manoeuvring room. Now you can see the plastic's naturally pulling away, and we're going to put that back in place. But before we do that, we need to bring it up to meet the vent that's going to go in there. Now this is one of those jobs you may have to do it once, twice, 3, 4 times before you get it exactly where you want it to be. Especially if you're in one of those super hot countries that's caused this plastic to come back probably a centimetre and sit there. You've got to bring it back bit by bit by bit. Nice easy strokes. Now what you're going to do is get strips of cardboard, and you're going to get your bulldog clip. You're not going to clip to the backing, you're going to clip to the foam and the plastic only. And you just need it along the edge there.
It's on my back.
Just grab some more cardboard. Okay, now what we're going to do is the clip handle on this side we're going to remove. We're going to pass the elastic band over the top of the dashboard. We're going to put the handle through the elastic, and then we're going to reattach it like so, and then you're going to repeat that all the way along. Now effectively all this is doing is giving you a set of fingers to hold on to the dashboard while you're heating it. Now you can't do it with your own fingers because you don't have enough of them, unless you've got a group of friends round. This one's just a little too strong on the elastic. So now we have all our clips in position, and you can see exactly what it's supposed to be doing here. It's just gripping hold of the plastic section that we want to stretch, using elastic bands to do the pulling motion without pulling too hard. Now what we're going to do is start the heating process. Now as usual, this is a nice slow warm up, and you're going to get it warmer and warmer and warmer, and at some point we're going to reach a temperature where that plastic will naturally pull into position. But because we're not getting it really hot, it's not going to stretch really quickly. By heating this whole area, we may only get it to move 1, 2, maybe 3 millimeters over a period of time. Now don't be surprised when you're doing this if your clips fly off. I found this happens quite a lot, but this is still the best process that I've come up with so far. Now at the moment we're just going to do this area. We're going to get it supple and stretched partially, and then we're going to remove the clips for the final part of the stretching by hand. As usual, I've got to remind you this is going to take a while here because it's very cold and I'm struggling to get the plastic to warm up quick enough. If you watch closely when you're doing this process and line up maybe the edge of the cardboard with something, you may even see the movement yourself, and it'll be a very, very slow and gradual movement. If you see it moving really quickly, then you've heated it up far too much. And when I take the clips off, you're going to see these indentations from all the clips, and as with the top edge, we can easily correct them after, so don't worry about those at all. If anyone comes up with a better idea of how to grip the edge of this without doing any damage, and how to keep it really, really cheap and easy for everyone on the street, then I'd love to know what it is, because I've still got a stack of these things to do. Okay, at this point I'm going to remove the clips. And just heat that final edge there. Now already you can see the edge is now level with where it needs to be, but we're going to take it slightly beyond that point. Just 1 second, I need to reach over here. Just keep on warming that edge now, that's the last little bit. Okay, now the glove, and just finally we're just going to stretch that last bit up by hand. And then when we've got it to where we want it to be, we're just going to hold it there until it goes hard. Depending, like I said, if yours is really, really stretched out of shape because the heat of the climate that you're in, then we'll have to just repeat the process over and over until you get it to where you want to be. Now, if I can, I'm just going to try and get some clips on this edge, if they will hold just the edge. No, they won't, so we'll have to hold it by hand. It's cold enough to hold now.
Okay.
Now I'm going to take off the clips and have a look at the results when I put a vent on now. Okay, as you can see, we've pretty much taken up all the gap. Compared to the other side, we've got gaps on both sides. So now what we'll do is repeat the process on the other side. I'll cut the video at this point, save showing you the whole thing all over again, and then we'll come back to it once the other side's done. So you'll see when we reposition now, it's certainly better than it was, but it's still not quite good enough. So I'm going to give it one more warm up and try again. And this is a process that you will have to do over and over again if you need to stretch it quite a lot. The alternative is forcing the job too quickly, and you'll find that then you'll end up doing damage to your dashboard. It's much better to just go slowly over and over. I'm just going to cut the video now. No smoke and mirrors. I just don't want to use up hours of video showing you the same thing over and over. So at this point I've now had 3 goes at warming this up and stretching it into position, and I'm more or less happy with it now. What I've done is screwed the vent into place so I can get an idea of anything else that I want to do to it. Now I do know that when these things left the factory, none of them were absolutely perfect in the first place, and we could be stretching this forever trying to get it absolutely perfect. And for those of you out there that are perfectionists, that have got the time to invest in it, you can keep on warming and stretching until you get it exactly how you want it. For me, this is bordering on acceptable. We've just got to reheat it one more time, and then we're going to stretch it one more time and glue it into position this time. Now we know we're more or less in place. If you compare it to this one, which hasn't yet been done, you can see just how bad some of these gaps and edges were. Nothing seemed to line up at all, even close, and it was quite noticeable when you looked in through the windows. But now I think we've got this one to a pretty acceptable position, and any man on the street should be able to do this type of repair. I've not put too much effort into it. Those of you that have more time, I know will put more effort into it, and you're going to get absolute perfection. So what I'm going to do now is take the vent back out. I'm going to warm the dashboard one more time, and then I'm slowly going to warm it and glue it, and work my way along to hold it all in place. So I'm going to start at this side. This was the last side I did, and I actually had to have 3 attempts at this to get it into position. Now we don't need it hot enough that we need gloves this time. It's just going to be hot enough that we can manipulate it while it's soft. Just a thin coat, stretch it up, and hold it there until it's dry. Okay, that's got it. Now we'll move on to the next piece. Okay, now I think you've got the idea. I'm going to continue along this. I'm going to cut the video at this point. There's no point you watching me doing the same thing over and over. I'm sure you've got the idea. Just warm it, glue it, stretch it, hold it in place. And you continue that the full length of the vent. Okay, so now what I've done is I've glued it just as you was watching. I've continued it all the way along, and as you can see, that's made such a big difference, because what I managed to do is when I warmed it again, I could stretch it again and the glue has held it in place. So now we've got a damn near perfect line along this side. Still a slight gap along that side. I may decide to take it off again and do it again, or once the windscreen's there, that side's less visible, so I may be happy with that and leave it as it is. Compared to this side, the massive gaps just look ridiculous, and I have seen some that are nearly twice that bad. So believe me, no matter how bad it is, as long as you haven't got any tears in the plastic, you can put all of these dashboards back to the original or damn near original finish using those simple 3 techniques I've given you. Now, I just want to reconfirm, I'm not teaching you how to do your actual dashboard. Every single dashboard is going to be slightly different in where and how it's warped. But I can tell you that the 3 techniques that I've just given you will allow you to repair every single dashboard. And the more time you put into it, the more perfect it's going to be. And you're going to walk away with something that you're really, really pleased with if you just put in the time. Now, I'm sorry this video took a long while in coming. I've been working on it, not just the video, but the preparation and the research in materials and bonding techniques, stretching techniques, etc. I've been working on it for a long, long while, and I'm really, really pleased with the results that I'm getting. As far as tooling goes, it's up to you which tools you decide to use. Whatever works best for you, what you've got around the home or what you can get cheaply. This is, after all, a video for the man on the street, not for the professional, although I'd be surprised if there isn't a few professionals out there that are using this technique now to get the results they want, to give them a much better car, easier selling, more pleasant to the eye. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. I truly believe that there is a lot of people out there, especially you guys in Australia, that have contacted me. I truly believe that you're going to make good use of this video and be pleased with the results. Now, as far as the vents go, the left-hand drive ones have been reintroduced by Mitsubishi. They've started remanufacturing them again, so you can get the left-hand drive ones quite easily. For the right-hand drive ones, I have some, the GTO UK Club has some, and Daniel Stalker, I think his name is, in Australia. Sorry Daniel if I got your surname wrong. Australia, Australasia, New Zealand, he's covering that area. So wherever you are in the world, you can get these new vents, you can put your dashboard back together and make your car look wonderful for years to come. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to click on the like and the bell, and I'll keep you up to date with as many videos as possible. Just to remind everyone, if you want me to do a video for you, I'll be happy to do it. Make sure you include your name, your proper name, not your screen name, and the country you're from. And I would ask that if you want me to do a video, a few people have been asking me things like how to rebuild their gearbox and how to rebuild their engine. Those are not really DIY jobs. I will be covering them long into the future, but first of all, I want to get the man on the street sorted with all those basic jobs that he's been putting off because he doesn't know how to do them. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.